Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. Mr. Campbell?
I just have one comment. Typically, I know you respond to the residents after they speak. I just have one other question, if you can include it in your response.
Yeah.
There's a road project going on at Metro Parkway in Crocker, and I know you said you went to the Department of Roads last week or so. If you have a little bit of insight into the timeline there.
Sure. Yep. So I want to try to address residents' comments. No money will be spent on major roads. Well, that's a false statement. In fact, the road study included for originally the 1.25 mils, 20% of the funding for all of the major roads in the township. So it was the finding of the engineer and the committee that 80% of those funds are available from other sources, but the study included a 20% match for major roads. So for Jefferson, for South River, for all those roads. No money for concrete roads. Again, false. Every mile of road in the township was included in the study, including both asphalt and concrete roads. So it's simply not true. Town Hall. Town Hall was repaved, gosh, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. I'm going by memory. 4 years ago, 5 years ago. 15 years from now, it will be 20 years old. I don't think it probably has a life of even 15 years. So I believe in a 20-year cycle, it'll need to be replaced. If you look at it now, yeah, it doesn't look like it would be the first road that we'd be doing, but over a 20-year period, yes, all of the mileage for Town Hall was included in the study, and the funds to repave it were included in the study, including Glockamora, as well as the Huron Point subdivision. In fact, as this board has discussed, there is a grant program available for all of the bridges in Huron Point, just those bridges. 4 or 5 bridges need to be replaced. 95% of the cost to reconstruct those bridges is available from the federal government. If there's a 5% match, the county will split it with us. We only have to come up with 2.5% of the cost of a bridge to have a bridge completely replaced. We've done that with one bridge. That construction is beginning March, and that's the first bridge off of Archer. But there are several other bridges in the Huron Point subdivision that need to be replaced. Our match for the engineering and the work that went into that, as well as our 2.5% match, you might recall, we approved a figure of a little over $88,000 to replace the bridge. But that project is probably $1 million project. So, there's definitely some work in Huron Point. What's better?
No, you said it was $1 million, but only 5%.
2.5%. The total cost of that bridge may be $1 million. I haven't seen those figures, but our share,
Right.
splitting the 2.5% as well as half of the engineering. The grant doesn't cover the cost of engineering. So half of the cost of engineering, half of the 5% match, $88,000.
In my head, I'm like 88,000 $1 million is.
Yep. Right, but because it includes the engineering costs.
So I'm sitting here thinking, why don't we just do it? If 2.5%, what are we waiting on?
Right. Well,
Right?
yeah.
Bring it and let's just do it.
But the thing is so what we've done is from general funds, we've already spent $88,000 on one bridge in Huron Point. If we're looking at 3 or 4 more of those bridges that need to be replaced, at what point do we say, wait a minute, some of those bridges are even larger, longer span, or higher than this current bridge, so we're probably looking at another $400,000 of expenses. But that probably equates to $6 million in construction. So we can get $6 million in bridges in the Huron Point subdivision for $400,000. But we can't if we don't have funding. But in addition to that, the cost for every mile of road in Huron Point was included in the study. Over the 20-year period, the study was based on every road in the township being repaved. There is no road omitted from that study. It was over 106 miles of roadway. Mr. Camperl asked about Metro Parkway in Crocker. Macomb County Department of Roads is installing a right turn lane for northbound Crocker onto eastbound Metro Parkway. That should alleviate a lot of traffic and congestion in that area, and hopefully help with issues relative to accidents and traffic issues. The project has begun. I think it was official start date of October 24th. It's slated to be completed November 15th. So we've got a couple weeks to go on that. Some of the other comments, the bladder, it wasn't Mr. Axtell, but I know that the clerk's office helps to administer the special assessment district. Can
And
you address the issue? There was something about
Yeah,
90% of paid
just-
and picking up?
Off the top of my head, I think we have just around $20,000 held back, and on a project of $130,000, it was right around 20% hold back retainage to make sure the work gets done. Within the contract, they have a hard and fast date when those need to be removed. They're not holding any of the bags over for any private work on the other side of winter. We've had a rainier than average summer, which has sort of slowed the process in draining those bags, but they're still stuck to that date in the contract when they'll be out. They should be within the next 2 weeks. So those should be out then. I got something from the engineer today. So.
Then, thank you. There was a comment about rewriting the ordinances and addressing Mr. Maher. I think it's important to understand that Mr. Maher is a paid consultant, but somewhere in there, I guess I'd like to consider him more of a, I certainly don't want to say, I don't want to choose a word or an analogy that minimizes his talent or the skills that he brings. But to a certain extent, Mr. Huth is, works for the township board. So if we say, Mr. Huth, please draft an ordinance to regulate the height of seawalls, unless it violates the law, he drafts the ordinance. So I'm not sure if Mr. Maher is the contact person that a resident might want to approach if, say, for example, they want to change in the ordinances. I'm thinking it's the planning commission members themselves that are ultimately answerable or responsible to the residents. If the planning commission directs Mr. Maher to change an ordinance or increase the fines or the oversight of signage, for example, in the township, he does it. But if the township planning commission doesn't tell Mr. Maher to change a sign ordinance, he doesn't necessarily on his own go rogue and say, well, I brought a new ordinance and I insist that you adopt it. It's ultimately the planning commission that utilizes his skills to draft those and certainly some advice. So I'd recommend that if you want to sit down for a half hour with someone, it would either be a planning commission member or the board member who's a planning commission liaison to bring some of those ordinance changes. But just for the record, those temporary signs are against our township ordinance. So that isn't one that needs to be revised. There was also a comment about the cost of the road study and the benefits. It was, in fact, the analysis of the mileage of the roads, what the cost is per mile, what impacts there are with other agencies, what sort of grant dollars are available. This road committee met several times with the engineers, meaning the engineer comes out. There was a report drafted. Really, the bottom line is if we had a township engineer, literally someone on the payroll, we wouldn't see a line item for a road study because it would be a part of that person's salary. But the idea is that over the course of a year's time, we get pinpoint service, whether it be for roads or whether it be for example, planning, by contracting those services out. So there was a study produced, there were several meetings that were held, there was a workshop that was conducted, the report was issued. I would certainly say there was a lot more than hundreds of dollars worth of work to do that road study. But ultimately, when all is said and done, the goal of that road study and the goal of the road subcommittee was to look at all the options on how we can address all of the roads in the township. Current funding is broken. There is no source of funding for local roads. We get a lot of complaints every spring about the roads. We looked at all of the options. We came up with what appeared to be the best option. We hung a number on that option to be able to say to folks that if you do want this to happen, this is the cost and this is the time frame. Put it in the form of ballot language, put it on the ballot, and come Wednesday morning, we'll know whether folks do or don't want this. And that's the beauty of this. This isn't a township proposal from the standpoint of saying that the township insists that this happen or wants it to happen. We believe this is the best way to address the roads in the township. But fortunately, we have what we know to be the best system in the world for finding out what people really want, and that's the ballot box. So if folks like it and they want to vote for it, that's great. If they don't like it and they vote no, well, at least next spring when folks call, we can say, this was the cost and this was the option, and the voters decided against that at this time. That's all there is to it. We have no other source of funding to fix roads. It's not a core function of township government.
Mr. Supervisor, I have a question. I'm all for the right turn lane at 16 Mile and Crocker. I think it's going to improve the traffic flow, and I think a lot of people are not going to go the long way around down Jefferson now into the neighborhoods to get somewhere because they want to avoid that intersection. My only concern is there's going to be a lot more cars, I think, turning there. I think it's going to increase traffic on that lane. Have they looked at anything as far as safety concerns for the people on the bike path? Because it seems like it's going to be a little bit more precarious of a situation if you're on that bike path when you're approaching the intersection with all those cars turning, more cars turning probably. And if this works, there should be more cars turning. I'm just wondering if they've done anything, if they're going to put a timer up or anything. I don't know. I don't have a solution.
Right.
Just concerned about that.
Yep. So the short answer is I mean, that responsibility lies with the Department of Roads. We've certainly brought up the issue of safety on that corner. There was recently an accident where a resident brought forth her concerns. We've addressed that with the Department of Roads. It's their responsibility, but in terms of whether or not we've been vocal, let's say this: we were vocal about the safety issue, and we've been vocal about the request for the right turn lane. You know, to the extent that we can, that's
All
what
we
we
can
have.
do,
We're a
yeah.
smaller fish in that sea. We've asked for it.
Right.
And the work is being done. We're not participating in that cost at this point, but certainly the traffic control device has been addressed.
My understanding was that it was gonna be similar to the other corners and that they have that green arrow, so it wouldn't be the right on red where you get that unrestricted flow across a pathway, similar to the other three corners, so. And we're getting the sidewalk connected there out of the benefit too, so
Good.
people aren't walking on the road or whatever.
Right, yeah, by Flagstar.
How's that going to affect the bank?
Well, they already have a right turn lane there. I think it's an extension of that lane. So I don't know that inherently, that one could argue that the congestion there is probably a deterrent for
Right.
someone to go to the bank.
So it may improve their situation.
I'd like to think so, but,
Yeah.
I guess I'd have to say that, the more congestion there can't help any business there.
Right.
Just a resident had mentioned about people having difficulty upkeeping their homes, and sometimes that becoming a financial burden. Just wanted to mention, I serve on the board for Macomb County Habitat for Humanity. We do offer a program called the Brush with Kindness, and it allows for people to apply. There is, some certain requirements that you have to meet, but it's a tool available for people to get, your house painted, a porch repaired, maybe a new light fixture or something like that. Small work around the house that you might not be able to get to for either financial or health reasons. And you can contact Macomb County Habitat at 586-263-1540. They'd be able to help you with that. And because I mentioned one of their services, I'll do a shameless plug for, we're hosting a fundraiser November 8th, Saturday. It's a concert with Amy Grant. Tickets are available at macombhabitat.org. It's a fun night. We did last year with Jose Feliciano, so if anyone's interested, call the clerk's office. I'll get you in touch with them to get tickets. So
Where's the fundraiser going to be?
it's at Fern Hill.
Cornell?
All right.
Mr. Tominello, as the person who sits on planning, don't you, if I remember, you guys have public hearings, right? For
That is
people that
correct.
want, that would be the proper place, Mr. Bardell, for you to come to the planning commission. And I don't know, Mr. Tominello probably knows when the next one of those is, but there is public hearings that the planning commission holds on these ordinances. And at that point, you can bring your ordinance ideas to the planning commission. It's actually a separate meeting, I believe. That'd be a good place, and everybody's there, Patrick Maher and all the planning commission members, and that's the place for the public to bring all of their ideas.
But the only problem I have with that is, I don't know if they get paid per meeting, but everyone's ready to get, I don't know if the blood sugar levels are bouncing all over, they're ready to leave. We need to bring in cheese plates, they're full spread, they're full of
Well, I think the planning commission will
They're ready to leave
listen to your
after the meeting,
ideas.
they're ready to take off, they're making a beeline.
Mr.
And
Tominello,
that-
perhaps you could
and-
look into
well,
cheese plates for planning commission.
I can do that. And not to
Form of
delay
protein,
the
doesn't have to be
meeting,
cheese, just any
not
kind
to
of
delay the
protein.
meeting any longer, but I do want to mention that a lot of the things that people see in the community are really reflective of enforcement rather than ordinance, integrity. So, you know, just like Mr. Burkess mentioned about signs, signs if not approved are not allowed. There is an ordinance for that. So that becomes an enforcement issue, not a planning issue.
Correct. Right.
You have to
As
separate
our,
those issues out for
as you
sure.
say, in other words, our current state of ordinances address the vast majority of the issues that come to us in the form of complaints.
Yes.
There are certainly, you know, holes or areas where improvement could be made, but the vast majority of complaints can be addressed with our current ordinances.
I know in Shelby Township, there's an ordinance, if you want to put a sign at the street, it's a $50 a year ordinance, or fee, I'm sorry, not an ordinance, $50 a year fee to put a sign at the street. You don't pay the fee, they take the sign away. So I don't know if that's something we could look into for our township. We don't have a fee on record that was paid for Cash for Homes. We can just go out and take the sign away.
I
Can
think
we
we
do
should
it
just
now anyway?
yank out most of those signs
they should
anyway,
take it.
regardless. you know.
That's right.
I prefer not to see it.
I like the yanking part in that whole process anyways. Any other board comment?
Motion to adjourn?
All right, we've got a motion to adjourn. Is there support?
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries, meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.
Mr. Supervisor, you may want to collect